Okay. Yes. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining this evening's webinar. I'm really happy to have Ayesha Christina Ben from Neighborhood Woof to take us through this session. So it's going to be really insightful. I'd urge all of you to please take your notes. And for any queries or questions, we'll keep it towards the end. So it'll be nice of you to share your queries with us and have Aisha take on those inputs. So Aisha comes with us with over 10 years of experience in the animal welfare space. And through her credit and the organization Neighborhood Wolf, they've done over 22 sterilizations till date. Am I right, Aisha?
22,000.
22,000. Yeah, and so a lot of field experience here at hand, and really delighted to have you, Aisha. I will
Thanks so
now
much,
begin the
Akash. Yeah.
PPT. Would you like to say something else, Aisha, before
No,
I
no.
begin?
You
Okay,
can start. I'll speak over it. Thanks.
all right.
Thanks so much, Akash, for having me.
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. A quick introduction about me and the organization I'm representing today to provide you some context as to why at all you should be listening to me. So I'm Aisha Christina Ben. I'm 38 years old. I've been working with animals since I was about 18 years old. I studied history at St. Stephen's College because I loved the subject, and I do to this day. The approach that guides Neighborhood Wolf came from observations made during college, in fact, and where I made some of my best friends, canine included. You could move to the next slide now. So the newfound loneliness of moving out of home, as much as I loved the exercise and freedom that it brought me, found me wandering the streets often around home. I was lucky it was all very familiar because I moved barely 500 meters away from my grandfather's home. No one wants to live with their grandparents in college. Uh, and you know that Delhi's reputation for women's safety needs no introduction. And the local dogs made me feel much safer. They were always by my side. There was one in particular called Long Snout, who used to actually follow me along. You could move along the slides. So just before I continue with the story I was starting, these are, of course, our credentials. We've been around since 2014. We have registered, I mean, we've been empaneled by the municipality. Carry on, Akash. Next one. This is roughly our impact over the past 10 years with over, as Akash just pointed out, 22,900 dogs. Uh, Now I would say over 200 suspected rabbit dogs are isolated. Many more treatments than the numbers here now, because these were numbers updated, I think, in the beginning of this financial year. We could move to the next slide. So to your left is Long Snout, who I've known, coming back to the story I was telling you. Um, he particularly developed a very strong bond with me. And to this day, I would wonder how he did it. He would actually come and pick me up from the metro station, arriving at the station about 10 to 15 minutes before I got there. And I know this because the metro guards would, I would always say namaste and so on my way back. And they asked how. They thought I would call someone at home and they would release this dog and he would come and pick me up. Whereas no such thing actually was happening. He just knew. Uh, I was half expecting my college administration to pull out a degree in his name as well, because he attended 3 years of college with me. And I mean, it's so stereotypical, na? His dog snoozing in history class. Uh, The trouble came the day he walked up and actually walked out of class yawning at my professor in the middle of a class during partition. Now, anyway, as all good Indian stories go, and as heartwarming as this was, trouble arrived pretty quick on the scene with a feisty girl and a feisty dog who speaks for herself. You can make out this is in his old age. He was quite the alpha. And uh, my neighbors actually reached a point where they wanted to, he never bit, but because of his size and his gait and the way he walked around, people wanted him off the streets. They said, are you waiting for him to bite? And I mean, me standing up and taking a voice only seemed to make it worse, because they didn't want to hear this 18-year-old's opinion. You're a student, stay in your place, etc. So uh, because he paraded around like this, I was really worried he would get into serious trouble. And therefore, and there was one night where people wanted to actually take him and kill him. So I took him to my grandfather's house, and we figured we have to find a better solution for him. So Long Snout and Hearty, who you see in this frame is Long Snout and Luffy, who is his daughter. Luffy's mother, my roommates wanted to do who were studying psychology, wanted to do a paper on psychosexual politics of canines, because on the one hand, she was terrified of him. On the other hand, he would kind of lord over her. And it was trouble waiting to happen. So, of course, the first thing we did was to get them adopted. You can move to the next slide. We got them sterilized, Long Snout and Hearty. Luffy, I actually adopted. And that's another note I would like to make, where I was very conscious of the fact that I was a college student. I didn't know where I was. So I found her foster care. I was lucky enough to find her foster care, where she stayed till I was ready to adopt her, when I was more confident about my future plans. So that is something that one has to keep in mind. Responsible. It's not just adoption, but responsible adoption. Then with birth control, I took Long Snout, and there you see Luffy's mother, Hearty. We went all the way to Masoodpur. So we are in North Delhi, and Masoodpur is in South Delhi. And I was absolutely horrified when I picked the dogs up. I knew nothing about sterilization back then. And I was really distressed by the condition in which the dogs came back to me in. So I worked at looking after them. And Long Snout was lucky enough to find a really nice home in a children's home, ironically. Here he was considered a threat to children. There he actually settled among them. And interestingly enough, a lot of the children who graduated from this children's home then proceeded to hear about us and actually joined our staff. Two of our most loyal staff members come from there. And I'll come to that later when we're talking about our team. So continuing forward, the reason I tell you this story is because, as I said, the lessons I learned back then as a college student was, there are countless caregivers and feeders on the street. There is this beautiful, thriving, heterogeneous community, mixed with rich, poor, different backgrounds, religions. The poor rickshawala on the street, the chai wala, the rich koti wala owner, guards, who actually do like and look after and keep track of dogs. And the pondering solutions became about how we can make medical facilities reach them. That's how Neighborhood Woof got its name. That we mean to empower local caregivers and feeders in the local community by providing them not only good quality veterinary services, but also कब तक है उसको बोलो स्पीकर देने के लिए
Please mute. Saraka, could you please mute at your end? Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Ayesha, please.
Right. So what you see is the next neighborhood I moved into after college, where I kind of learned from the lessons before. And this is the neighborhood I moved into. So I made sure that the dogs I was leaving behind were all sterilized and immunized, and that none of them had. And I kept in touch. In fact, I was in touch with a lot of those dogs because it was in very close proximity to where I moved. And this next list you see is actually every single dog listed out. So my husband, who's also on my trust board, he's a musician by profession, but an environmental toxicologist by academics. Plus, he studied chemistry, so he's very well versed with chemistry and numbers. Though it doesn't help him in his music, but it definitely helps in my work. So these were names that we gave our dogs, keeping track of what was happening in the neighborhood and basically what the impact of our sterilization efforts were. I used to take each of these dogs actually to friendicos. My father, of course, insisted that I start working with him because even though I had joined an organization, he was very particular about work ethic and he felt that I needed discipline. So he asked me to start working with him. And his office was in Nehru Place. He gave me his 12-year-old car. And I started picking up the dogs one by one and taking them for sterilization. I've told you this story, and I started with these specific stories for a reason. It's not because I mean I love them, and I'm really attached to the dogs I speak about, but and they for me tell a very important story. But I do this to provide you context about who I am, where I started out, to give you an understanding of what I had when I started out ABC, because what I am really keen to do, and one of the reasons why I was so excited about this podcast, is because I'm hoping that more and more people step up to do ABC. I want it to be a profession that someone actually is eager to start and provide whatever help and resources that they need to get going. Uh, in addition, of course, to making you aware of a lot of things that are important for ABC centers. So coming back to the PPT, this is about keeping track of what was happening in my neighborhood. And I know a lot of caregivers and feeders will relate to this because they have similar lists of their own neighborhoods. And this is actually very, very useful data for whether you look at it at a local level or whether you look at it at a city level. So understanding the impact that ABC had in my neighborhood, I decided that this is what I want to do, and this is where I want to go. And as I said, if we can bring these facilities to local caregivers, then perhaps we would be able to make a much larger impact over the city. Now, I know I personally hated preachy tones. And I was just asking my mother for a recipe for kalkal since Christmas is coming up. And I was telling her I hate my way of learning is to actually do. And that's not always great because sometimes by doing, you also make a lot of mistakes. And this is the kind of work where you want to minimize your mistakes because when you do, there is often a life at stake. So, and that's not a very easy thing to live with. So I'm not going to be, I've tried very hard. I mean, I've not tried very hard, but I've made it a specific point to not be preachy here and instead run through how I've done it and what we did and the struggles we faced along the way so that it's a bit easier for you all to understand and perhaps be more aware about how to go about this work. Moving ahead. So, setting up, of course, is a very daunting exercise. Personally, it took me about 3 years to finally wrap my mind about it. I did so with less than 15,000 rupees in my pocket. Rotan, who still works with me to this day and handles our accounts and all our administration at the center, both of us went one September morning, 24th September to be precise, and registered as a public charitable trust. Our choice for doing so was because trusts are much easier organizations to govern. Societies tend and lend to be slightly more complicated bodies. So after doing a little bit of advice and being guided, a combination of uh, a chartered accountant and somebody who's actually and a lawyer sat down and drafted a basic trust deed for us. And that's how Neighborhood Woof was born into existence. And shortly after, because I was in touch with the municipality about the dogs that they would pick up, I had become more aware about the ABC infrastructure around. One of the veterinary directors said, okay, why don't you start? And we have a center out in Prehladpur. So we went all the way to Prehladpur, outer Delhi, which was one long corridor with kennels on either side, our very typical state ABC design, with two rooms, square, small rooms. And that's how we started actually doing ABC. Back then, the project recognition rules did not apply. So now life is a little different. There is you actually cannot just start ABC. You have to be a recognized organization by the Animal Welfare Board. So those of you who are approaching 3 years, if there are any organizations here, the point at which you reach 3 years is when you go ahead and apply for your AWBI recognition. The next step is project recognition, which comes after. Only you're eligible for it online. The applications can only be processed online now if you are actually recognized. Now, we Neighborhood Woof did not identify as a shelter. So we actually never bothered to go ahead and get our AWBI recognition. Uh, in 2023, when the rules were updated, we have on record communication with the municipality about fixing our infrastructure. So that's another point that I've mentioned here, which is infrastructure, where a lot of you will find that when you start working with the state, either you have your own space and you have your own facilities for ABC. But if you don't and you're reliant on contracts for space like we are, then the infrastructure you're likely to get is not going to be compliant with the ABC Dog Rules 2023. Ours certainly wasn't. And we consistently wrote about it. We brought it on record. And in 2025, we were finally given, in Feb, we were finally given the permission to redo it. We asked them to. Rule 10 of the ABC rules obligates the authority to give you this infrastructure. This is one mode you can take. There are cases where the municipality has actually stepped up and fixed infrastructure in some cases. And I think those are ABC centers that have come up later on, and especially after 23, but very few in Delhi. So this is a very, very big challenge currently that one faces. And setting up your space in that is the way we did it and the way I did it was first understand exactly what I need, list out everything that was required for ABC. Uh, uh, it's amazing how the old school, my dad used to say job lists are very important, and listing out, organizing yourself. You'd be surprised at how the moment you start actually listing it out and writing it down, things automatically fall into place. So we started by what are the basics, and we'll come to that earlier moving forward when I'm talking about surgical procedures, because that tells you about what it is that we are doing in an ABC program at the end of the day. That's the most important thing, that surgical procedure going correctly. And of course, accurate release and such like, but understanding what your steps are. And here the ABC rules, I now know them by heart. The first half is, of course, telling you about what constitutes the board, what the monitoring committee is about, different terminology that is used for the rest of the document. Rule 10, as I pointed out, is about the obligations of the municipality. So basically, what you should and can and be putting down on paper. I cannot stress whether the department gives it to you or not. It's important for you always to communicate with the authorities in writing, on record. In fact, that's we are impleaded in the current matter that is placed before the Supreme Court regarding street dogs, and all of that documentation is today actually going to help us. Back then, I wrote nirash hoke, I would write these letters because it didn't feel like it was making a difference. But all of that today adds up as a volume of evidence actually about sometimes the fairly lackadaisical lackadaisical attitude of the authorities towards important issues such as infrastructure that impact the success of this program, in fact. For me, starting out, instead, it's daunting when you when you close your eyes and you look at an ABC, visualize an ABC center full of dogs. That's no that nobody started out like that. Everybody, no matter how large they are, started out slowly and at a scale that they are comfortable working in. So we started by we would accumulate 3 to 4 dogs every day and operate them once a week because we couldn't afford a surgeon to come down and work every day. So the surgeon would come down over the weekend and operate for us on his day off, which was generally a Sunday. So you choose a scale that you can afford rather than taking on more than you are capable of handling. And here is where training is very important. How do you know what that number is? What do you know? What is the limit of what your space and your staff can take? My attitude towards training was actually to be a part of everything. And this is something a lot of people say, and I think that kind of sets Neighborhood Woof apart, where whether I'm physically present or not, there is over the years we've developed a methodology for me to always keep track of every single dog that is in my under my responsibility and in my care, and that's my job to do, and to make sure that the systems we follow and these rules that are down on paper are actually followed in practice. How do I ensure that? So the way I did it was to focus on training. So you pick up point 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 of the ABC rules, and they kind of highlight everything that you need to do, that your team needs to do. It's actually fairly elegant protocol. And I think the only thing where we've advanced a little more is we use technology. We use good surveillance technology. We use the Global Alliance of Rabies Control app in addition to the Smart City app, which is something, again, letters and letters and letters got us. The Smart City app actually, and we'll get to that when I'm talking about intake, allows us to ensure accurate release of dogs. It doesn't allow release unless you are within 50 meters of the location. So these are some of the things that and challenges that we needed to keep in mind when we set up. And with funding, the municipalities, back then it was 770. Now it's 1,000. Certainly not enough to run an ABC program. Here again, how we managed it was to pick a scale that we were comfortable working within, and gradually make our way up, uh, developing a reputation with caregivers, and good quality, and slowly getting in contributions by word of mouth. Moving forward, you could play that video. This is just an idea about what our processes look like. There's actually some music in it, but that's okay. Okay, moving forward. So, what you saw was actually a run through of processes from start to finish and what they look like at our center and the protocol we've developed. So, intake at I think all ABC centers that operate, at least in Delhi, uh, there are three different kinds. One is that come from the municipality. Then there's those that caregivers bring to our doorstep, and then there's those we go out and catch along with them. Uh, Depending on the scale you choose a catching area or an approach to how you approach a certain neighborhood. The maps you see below are maps by the Global Alliance of Rabies Control. And why this is important, and I'm going to talk about this because I want everybody across, I think this is relevant for everyone, whether you're a vet student, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're um, of, running an organization. It is important. You could be sterilizing thousands of dogs, but it wouldn't matter if you didn't carry out the exercise of surveillance. Surveillance allows you to measure your impact, what the total numbers are. It will allow you to actually be almost predictive about rabies, because as you start plotting all the dogs that you're vaccinating, if you mark a suspected rabid dog, once you follow the protocol for suspected rabid dogs, which I'll come to towards the end when we talk about advocacy, and transforming street dog management, which is our work outside the center. It's important to carry out, no matter how small, even if it's ABC in your own neighborhood, you must keep track and document your exercise from a neighborhood's perspective. Whether it's neighborhood or city, documentation and recording, geotagging your dogs is important because it allows us to measure impact of the program. Uh, the other important part of intake then, given that it usually comes in different forms. So one is, as what we were just talking about, is on the street, and then there's intake at the center where you ensure that the dog is tagged properly. We actually decided to upgrade our methods of tagging. Instead of using that gatte ka strap that a lot of people use, we decided to use it's a thin bag strap that you get like the kind you have on your backpacks, but much thinner. And we actually use sellotape over a number, and you'd be shocked, over a printed number. So numbers are actually printed and kept. So we have an intake drawer, a tagging drawer that has eyelets and rivets, tag materials that are usually cut and prepared in advance. And the reason why we printed numbers is because when we would write them with markers, they would just smudge, and we sellotape them on. We are continuing to try and find a better, even though this way of tagging has worked really well, as you can see in this photograph. It's bright. We use different colors for the different kinds of intakes so that we can recognize. So MCD is usually pink. This dog is a caregiver's dog, so they're blue. And a lot of times we release with the tag. So not only do we end up spreading awareness about what we've done in the area, but it's also a wonderful way for caregivers to make their way back to us if there are any issues with the dog, or if the dog has sometimes wandered away. That's another advantage that came to us, where some of the cases were getting reported back to us. And it felt so nice to be associated with accurate release. And someone just mentioned collars getting stolen. The good thing is these don't. We actually got slightly fancier, with Velcro, so on, for the Red Fort dogs, but those were actually taken off in less than 24 hours. Whereas some of these tags generally stay on for a few weeks, if not months, after surgery. There have been very rare cases where we've been called in to recapture a dog to take the tag off because the dog has grown too fat or the tag has got stuck somewhere. And those cases have actually been reported back to us. So this is where we made our impact on tagging, and it allowed us actually to improve our accuracy by leaps and bounds. We have a little group called the NW Intake and Aadhaar, and the team is trained And that's when I said it's important that you do it yourself first, because when you do it, you understand the little challenges that you face when there is a difficult task to do. And how do you get your team? So that's where it's important to find people who genuinely like dogs. I think that's a good place to start, because they're likely to be better invested in actually taking care of the dogs and making sure that all this protocol is followed. So the on our intake and Aadhaar WhatsApp group comes a photo, the Aadhaar copy of the caregiver, if a caregiver is involved, and a pro forma, as you can see on the right-hand side. This is our intake pro forma that has precautions for caregivers, including it's always advisable to send your dogs vaccinated if possible for 9-in-1. It is a beautiful way to keep infections at bay at ABC centers, and other important guidelines for you. Uh, Neighborhood Woof is trying to be cool now in the tech space, and now we're trying to convert this information to more infographic forms for our caregivers that we can send out in the form of a WhatsApp text. Basically, precautions that you need to take before surgery. The whole point of a caregiver-centric approach is that it's a more qualitative one. Caregivers can keep track. It adds accountability to the ABC Center, and uh, caregivers have history. I mean, we often, amongst us personally, as a team, joke because sometimes we're given a download of so much information about dogs that we may not necessarily want. But we find very cute and endearing anyway. But it's crazy when you're trying to run a center and there's a huge rush of people and somebody's telling you about the entire kind of history of their dogs from their great grandmothers to their grandmothers, and we're like, okay, yes, but let's talk about this dog. But that's great because it allows you to understand if there are any a better history of the dog. A lot of times we are able to guide caregivers about not only the kind of care that they should provide before they send their dog for surgery, but after as well. So it's very important, and I can't stress on it enough, tagging dogs correctly and a photograph attached to intake, because this is a huge step in being able to ensure accuracy at the point of release and that there is no chaos at ABC centers, which have built a reputation for incorrect releases and catching. So it's this exercise of taking a photo of the dog and putting it on that WhatsApp group that allows everyone at the center to know that this dog came in. He's our responsibility till he's released. And this is a photo of the dog with its intake form. Moving forward. So examination once the dog comes in uh, is there is immediate observation that you make, which is gait. The number of times that you'd be surprised that even with our high intake of caregivers' dogs, we've been able to isolate suspected rabid dogs. We have been able to isolate dogs showing symptoms of distemper, uh, dogs with loose stool. So immediate observation is actually very important. Even things, I mean, dogs tend to vomit, yes, they tend to pass stool because they're scared in the vans and in transport. They're usually drooling. So it's sometimes very easy to get confused. But that's the point of experience, and that's the point of your experience, because when you learn to identify it, you learn to teach your team. So one is a body condition score. There are lots available online where you can, it's a way to describe the state of the dog, and with time, you actually learn to train to look at the entire dog. Then, of course, there's observing colors of stool and urine. A lot of times, extremely foul smelling. I mean, we've learned to segregate the smell of fear, which you get very often in municipality vans, versus the smell of infected feces, for example. We can tell. So those dogs are isolated immediately, and it plays a huge role in keeping your center infection free. So there's immediate observation. Then there's as I said, tagging and photos and so on that are taken so that you can keep track. Then there's observation over time that we have. You must develop a system for your staff to be able to, and in fact, in the ABC rules, it's mentioned as disinfection logs. You should be able to mention if there is a dog with loose stool, for example, that is noticed in a kennel before surgery. These observations have allowed us to improve our uh, output and the quality of our output and ensure the reduced post-op complications that we have. And here again, documentation is very important, and I'll come to that shortly. Uh, the grand question that we are all talking about right now about whether blood tests are essential or not. Now, a lot of people say absolutely blood tests should happen. That's the standard for human care. Well, I'd like to, at that point out that so is a proper X-ray before you put yourself under anesthesia. So is a chest X-ray. An anesthetologist is to examine you. There is a whole process that does not happen. Uh, the reason why physical examinations, and that is why a surgeon would never agree to make you undergo surgery without one, that physical examination is important because it guides very often the kind of testing. For example, if you have an old dog who's drinking too much water and who's looking weak and not eating well, and you've observed this within the first 24 hours or the day they've come in, then you know that you do not go ahead. You possibly check for diabetes. You do a sugar test as well. If it is absolutely essential that you make her that you are going to make her undergo surgery because you've been told that she's been delivering litter after litter. So examination is very important, and it often guides the kind of testing that you do. A combination of examination and history of the dog will tell you the extent of testing necessary. Now, we have a CBC machine that you can see in this photograph, so we do a basic CBC. Very often, if something shows up here, then we proceed always with an LFT and KFT and any further testing or examination after surgery has been deferred. These are very important steps that make a huge difference. It's amazing how it just adds a few minutes extra to your intake time, but it makes a huge and documentation, but it makes a huge difference to the quality of an ABC program. Let's move ahead. The day before surgery, we give antibiotics because we believe that's made a huge difference. It allows for antibiotic coverage to start immediately. We've noticed a reduction. So when you measure and document, and you're actually documenting everything honestly, okay, these dogs had to stay for extra period. This dog suffered breathing issues during surgery. You're able to find patterns. So, for example, we were able to catch spurious spirit during COVID because suddenly our incision started turning yellow. So we figured there's a problem with safai. And we couldn't understand it. So we reverted to buying spirit from and more expensive spirit from a known chemist. And that's resolved the problem overnight. So we add an antibiotic the moment the dog comes in, and doctor has approved and examined the dog and said it's fit for surgery, and the blood test has been performed. And the day of surgery, of course, an antibiotic is given. And we document everything that we see before so that if there are any complications after, we are able to go back to pre-op and see if there was something that happened or we missed or something that could it could be used as a marker to point out for help us avoid any future complications. Moving on. Uh, I have added this slide. I mean, I think it's good for everyone, caregivers and everyone to know, but specifically for vets and for entrepreneurs such as myself, who are involved with running and managing operating theaters. In the human world, my job is handled by a medical officer. not by a compassionate person who has a heart in the right place. So in our case, all our medical procedures and all these decisions, whether our vet is a good one or not, whether what our medical procedures should be is not based on what Ayesha is discovering as she goes along the way, but by a trusted veterinarian. In our case, it's Dr. Vivek Arora, who is actually a private vet, who is has been a consultant and a very good friend over the past 15 years, guiding me along the way. Uh, our job and managing an operation theater is to make sure that you adhere to these principles during surgery. If you can maintain these things, then there will be very, very little chance for or scope for anything to go wrong. So everything that we do in an OT, again, there's a, I mean, sorry, I'm going soap opera on you, but I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Grey's Anatomy. There's something that the very first episode where they talk about uh, the operation theater. There's a reason why they're called theater. The reason why they were called theaters is because it's like a production. Everybody has it's simple. Everybody has a very specific role to play in the OT, and these are the steps that you need to maintain. It for From a perspective of training, and this is another thing that a lot of organizations face. We don't have the luxury of very, very experienced vets. So most of us are forced to actually ensure that our vets are trained somewhere by a slightly more experienced vet. Uh, it is actually keeping these principles in mind, reminding your surgeon about the fact that this is your job. These steps need to be followed as management, ensuring that your surgeon maintains a certain ethical attitude towards ensuring these steps. And that is the way we ensure your operating theater is actually up to mark and following the standards that it should be following. Moving forward. So, trained staff, as I said, dosages so that there is no room for mistakes. Checklisting inside the operation theater is very, very important so that you don't end up confusing doses or mixing up dogs. It's amazing how that little step allows you to ensure safety. Operation theaters should never be too cluttered or crowded. There should be ample space to move and carry out spaces. Try and minimize your footprint inside the OT. Following this allowed us to actually, despite the poor infrastructure crumbling as it was that was given to us, it allowed us to send our dogs back healthy after release because we followed this. This was like our religious book. Moving forward. Post-operative care, again, without going into too much detail, um, there are likely only two reasons for post-operative care. Either, as you saw in the previous point, you're not following a septic technique. Alternatively, there was something wrong with the dog beforehand. Often, and in the few cases that I have seen, even blood tests did not highlight the issues with the dogs. For example, one had a bleeding spleen that in fact did not show up until it was too late. And in cases such as these, I think what makes a huge difference is when because you are documenting, as the previous slide said, you're documenting everything that happens in the OT. Do a postmortem on every single dog that has died, whether it's due to surgery or whether it's due to treatment or something else. Very often, even in cases of treatment, our doc always does a postmortem because sometimes we've had some very interesting learning from that, something that we did not see, and that explains why a death happened. Documenting makes a huge difference, and sharing your observations with caregivers. This is how Neighborhood Woof, this is how we have maintained our reputation with caregivers, even when things do get complicated. In cases where there is a pre-existing condition that has been found, and it is not necessarily due to the lack of examination or blood tests, because we've seen such issues even when we did those tests. Tick fever, for example, asymptomatic tick fever or distemper, it didn't show up, and the trauma of surgery made it worse. In those cases, again, being honest with caregivers, sharing information, doing so in a professional manner without screaming or shouting, allowing them access to their dog, allowing them to visit their dog, updating them regularly makes a huge difference in making them understand. So even the most, caregivers are used to shoddy experiences and bad experiences in the past. When you understand that and when you relate to that, and that goes back to the story I started with in the beginning, that I know what it feels like, I can relate to them better, and therefore I am able to address their concern and show them, gain their trust by making them understand that this concern that happened didn't happen because the team was negligent or because we don't bother to keep records, or this is one of the other places that just treat dogs like numbers, but we actually do follow due process and a proper methodology, and that allowed us to actually handle and manage and prevent a death in cases where we have prevented it. And repeated caregivers, repeated experiences, such where we've called up and said, hey, we managed to avoid that from happening. Or your dogs went into distress just as we gave anesthesia, so we withdrew. We had decided not to proceed with surgery. Perhaps we need to do better testing, observe the dog, whatever the cases may be. It makes a huge difference in gaining the trust and faith of caregivers. Moving forward. The accuracy in release is something that, again, I think not only have we gained a reputation for personally, but we've earned a we've also been actually tackling the municipality system. Once I brought about a certain standard at my own center, it became about improving the citywide program. So the Smart City 311 app by the MCD actually it's mandatory to use. Organizations that are not using it are being non-compliant and as indirect non-compliance. It allows you to geotag a dog, and it follows everything of that dog's journey from the moment it was picked up to release. What our ask publicly now is to the authorities is to hand over this data to caregivers and feeders, let them view the data so that they're not running around helter-skelter searching for their dogs. It adds a huge layer of transparency and accountability. If you can add complaints about dogs, why can't you add data that we are already, and it is mandatory for us to upload? Down to the organ of the photograph in the operating theater. And as I said, you cannot release the dog till you are within 50 meters of where the dog was caught. The app doesn't allow you to press the button. What we hope once it does, and if the authorities do listen to us and make it public, it would allow all of us to participate and know and track where our dogs are going when they are picked up and dropped back. The important thing, geotagging, therefore, makes a huge difference to where dogs are released. We call caregivers, and caregivers usually join us. And as I said, with the MCD dogs, we not only do videographic documentation of release in case the caregiver comes back. This usually stays with us for about a month or two because it's impossible to keep storing so much data on cell phones. Moving forward. Some of the other important factors that one keeps in mind while running an ABC program, as I said, I have actually covered a lot of these issues, but one I would like to talk about specifically, which is food. The right kind of food, no milk, preferably curd, eggs, rice. What you feed your dogs post-operatively matters because nutrition plays a huge role. So we feed our dogs twice a day, And we've actually built a dog. We must be, and I'm really proud to report that we've actually built a dog kitchen at our center specifically for cooking dog food, storing their dog bowls, and disinfecting the bowls also. There's no point going ahead and disinfecting kennels if you're going to go and feed dogs in, go and put a bowl where a rabid dog ate in front of another dog's bowl, to another dog. The overall care that you provide a dog makes a huge difference to their anxiety levels. So at our center, we insist on providing, for example, there is bedding in each kennel in the winter. We ensure that there's water. We let each dog out for a little while in the central corridors from their kennels. A lot of them by day two actually learn that the door is going to be open for them and they need to come out and defecate. That helps actually keep their cleaning, makes cleaning easier, not to mention leaves their kennels much more hygienic. I think it's important as organizations to develop, and this is what I have tried very hard to do at my team, fight some of the desi habits we have कि सिर्फ cleaners potty साफ करेंगे, भेदभाव पढ़ाई पे. We try and build a culture where people trust each other. Uh, Honesty is valued. We actually do try and address individual concerns, personal concerns, running more like a family unit rather than a stringent corporate attitude towards our caregivers. It is important how you treat your team. It will impact how they treat dogs, and it will impact how they treat caregivers and the general impression that they give out to the public. Because it's a reflection of you at the end of the day. So it makes a huge difference to every aspect of your center, including how they will approach cleaning and the lengths they will go to carry out their work. I think respect and dignity is what every human being looks for. And I was very disheartened by what I used to see in some organizations, including how they treated even me so much for all my education and all of that. So it makes a huge difference how you speak to people. And I say this to caregivers because I think you must also keep it in mind when you communicate with shelter staff. When you talk to them nicely and you give them the respect that they deserve, you will often find they will go out of their way to help you out and provide you the information that you need. And it plays a huge role in how they build relationships with you moving forward. Professionalism within and outside the center is something we take very seriously. How you talk to each other, you know how we tend to speak to each other. You can continue playing that video, Akash. So, how you talk and how we work with caregivers. Uh, it's actually when it's a beautiful loop how the team works with caregivers, how caregivers work with the team, and how the organization is able to make an impact in a neighborhood. It's important to also guide caregivers about how they can contribute to the program better, recognizing their abilities and their limitations. Some caregivers can pick up dogs, some can't. And these are things that your team will become keen on recognizing because they realize that it helps them out to a large extent. But they will do that when you are empathetic as the leader. I think that it made a huge difference when I was empathetic and I heard them out because very often if things went wrong, the team could speak to me, caregivers could speak to me, and we would usually resolve that conflict in a peaceful way rather than fighting with each other and the kind of conflicts that you usually hear among people. I'm approaching the end of this. Uh, Working like this is the impact you see when we started out, and the orange slide is the difference caregivers make. When we started out, nobody trusted us, but slowly and steadily following the principles that I shared with you, we've reached a point where the maximum number of dogs are brought to us actually by caregivers and feeders, and that is to me the surest sign of trust being built. And as I said, why is that important at the end of the day? Because the lesson we learned right at the very beginning, which I'm still actually continuing to learn is the right way to go, which is no one can do this alone. it is working within a community and empowering that community by which we can make a difference. Moving forward. Uh, I know we're running out of time, but I'm not going to, again, take too much time here. Having come this far and reaching a point where we made a difference, we said, okay, we are doing right by the dogs that come to us and in the neighborhoods that we are working in. The next logical questions, of course, became scaling up from there. Uh, Scaling up became so easy thanks to the principles we followed in the beginning. There's an automatic faith that followed. We became more confident in our tones. Uh, w- I'm no expert. I wouldn't call, I mean, you can see we have some 10K followers, which I don't think is anything great. And these are essentially people who have learned about the ABC work that we carry out. And I like that. I like that's how people have, it's a certain qualitative relationship that we have with our following and the people who've been following our work. Like someone just said, we've been following you for a while. That's important to us, and that's the way we mean to grow and move forward. And in fact, that support has automatically allowed us to scale up. Okay, these guys are good, they're doing their jobs well, they deserve the help they can get. It allowed us to go ahead and, as I said, fundraise the entire amount for redeveloping our infrastructure. That cost us really an unbelievable amount of money. We were able to do it because we had a good volume of work and a reputation that we could stand on, that people wanted to support. Writing down your goals and organizing made a huge difference. I have been able to gradually tackle most of the issues that I face with either the municipality or in even organizing my team by just listing out what it is that we are going to address this month and the next. Nobody's perfect, and I'm certainly fighting and struggling, and a lot of times I end up delaying things. But that is where I step in and say, okay, no, I need to give this to somebody else to do because I am messing this up. So uh, doing that is, again, learning from one's mistakes. There's being defensive. I am usually, because I'm so attached to what I do, I mean, it's a childhood trait. Standing up can very easily become defense. But I think the reason I am like that and I stand up is because I look at my own work with a very critical eye. Is this acceptable? How can I allow this? And not waiting for somebody else to come and tell you, listening, being critical, listening to feedback, hearing what somebody is saying, but then saying, okay, is this acceptable to me? No, it's not. This is what I'm going to change. The infrastructure was the municipality's job, but it's not acceptable to me to work in a center like that. So I'm going to raise the funds to rebuild it. Uh, Putting my thoughts down on paper, organizing what I need in that, what is that improvement in infrastructure, listing it out, taking those ABC rules and listing out everything that I need to do. All the volume of organization that we've done in the past allowed us to build actually this beautiful purpose-specific structure that has actually will make our ABC program not only financially sustainable, but also cater to a larger number of dogs, scaling up the numbers that we are tackling. Uh, Ending with a note I would like to share with all of you, which I think will actually interest caregivers a lot more. Um, Advocacy. We, Neighborhood Woof, chose a very specific role given our specialization in ABC, and you can move to the last slide now. Right. So there's ABC at the center. There's a difference we made. I began with talking to you about surveillance on the street. To me, the answer to a lot of the things that we face, everyone of late, there are so many different problems with the ABC program that it often seems like we have just too much on our plate. That at the end of the day, there are just too many too many things that need to be fixed. The ABC centers are in terrible shape. The government is not giving enough money. There are very unethical NGOs working. There is no surveillance happening. I mean, you can list, there's no rabies protocol. You could just, and what that tends to do is it, makes it feel like this battle is already lost. It's too difficult to fight. That's number one. And two, we're actually feeding the argument that ABC is not working, because a lot of people end up saying, oh my God, yes, you're right. This is also not happening. This is also not working. See, the program is a failure. So it is very important what we advocate for and the message that we do it with. It seems like we are being forced into this false narrative of these are animal loving. Why did I start by saying I'm 38 years old, I studied history? Because that gives you an idea of who I am personally, not ये ABC Center की owner है. Where did I start from? That I was actually a dog lover. I loved my dogs. I feel this way. There's a certain loyalty that I feel about them. In the same way, it's important that we show the public that we are not these dog lovers who don't care about anybody. It's important that we care about human safety, we care about public health, we care about vaccination, and we know that there is a scientific solution, and this is why it's not working. So what you see in front of me, you right now are, in my opinion, very specific steps, small, easy to achieve. Well, small is an is let's say is a relative word, but it allows you, these are specific steps that you need to implement, and that the authorities, in fact, we placed, this is what we have given this document to the authorities as well, whether it is the Union Ministry of Urban Development, the Delhi Ministry of Urban Development, or the Delhi government, or the MCD, and even court as well. We've placed all these submissions in front of them. We advocate microchipping because it's an easy way of ID and keeping track. It's inexpensive and not unsafe, as a lot of people are claiming to be. Claiming. So locally, we want caregivers and feeders to participate in the program. As you can see, we are saying that they make NGOs more transparent. RWAs must form dog committees as per the ABC dog rules in case of any kinds of conflict, whether it's a dog bite or whether it is the dogs chasing cars or whatever their concerns may be, which must include all stakeholders. It cannot exclude a caregiver if they want to be a part of it. They cannot exclude the local NGO or the authority from this dog committee. From the government, the green spots you see are what we hope for the government to change, which is facilitating this public participation that we ask for. The Smart City app is one way to do it. Keeping track of NGOs through the monitoring committee, and surveillance, as I pointed out. That surveillance will make it possible for us to say whether we are 70 or 80 or 90 or 100% vaccinated, or that we are this close to being rabies free. The cities that have been able to declare themselves rabies free in India have been able to do so because they are practicing surveillance. Without surveillance, there's no measurement. For this, we strongly believe that, I mean, the Global Alliance of Rabies Control is one way of doing it. They actually provide this app to the government as well if the government would wish to use it, where we expect data collation to happen in a transparent, organized manner. I'm frontline rabies control, yet I don't know the dog bites in my zones. These are the kind of things that we should be highlighting. And this is what we say, this is what I go and say, that you hold me accountable for stopping the dog bites in my wards. How do I do that when you're not reporting those bites to me? So that is when it becomes data collection and sharing, interdepartmental coordination as per the NCDC guidelines based on One Health approach, which is human, animal, and environmental health. They actually mandate this integrated health surveillance. And you may think, oh my God, Aisha is like talking in the air right now. A little town like Jammu is actually doing it and is almost rabies free. Goa has done it. There are lots of other little cities doing it. It is not that complicated to implement. It's actually just one little step. as to getting your animal husbandry department to take on some sort of technological surveillance. Lastly, and I will end with this, rabies, which everybody is going on and on about rabies, 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 rabies. We in Delhi, for example, I won't speak for the country, but the the negligence of rabies control has been documented even by the most earnest critics of the ABC program. So they also know that it is because of the lackadaisical attitude towards rabies. And that is most telling. It's almost like they're now all using their arguments to fuel what the court is trying to do. But in Delhi, it's as simple as 2 isolation vans and 2 kennels at every ABC center. Overnight, there are 20, I think there are about 20 locations for ABC centers in Delhi. So in 10 days' time, you could have 40 isolation kennels for rabies. And I say 2 vans because I mean, any mathematician or a statistician here would really scowl at my calculation, but I've overcompensated. I've said, okay, I see 2 to 3 dogs every 300 dogs that come to me. So let's say there are 1,200 dogs going to 20 organizations. That's still just the 12 dogs going to 20 organizations. That's still just 240 dogs in a month. That are suspected rabid, and your 40 isolation kennels and 2 isolation vans for the city sitting at Civic Center, it would take at most an hour and a half with traffic in Delhi to get at any point within Delhi, even if you have to look at the furthermost border. But that isolation is extremely important for rabies. And this is something that we should be highlighting because given that everybody is panicking about rabies, what I find most ironical and shocking is that we are this lazy about its containment. And this is a point that we have been definitely trying to stress on even in court. Uh, that it is in our control, and this thing of we are so far away from we can be rabies free by 2030 if we want to. It's just that we need a little bit of will and a little bit of discipline in following this protocol. Thank you everyone for listening. Opening up for questions if anyone has any. That's it.
Thank you so much, Aisha. A wonderful, wonderful session. I will stop sharing the
Akash.
presentation
I hope
now.
everyone else did.
If I can, before getting to the questions, if I can request everyone to turn on their cameras, if we can just quickly take a quick snapshot of all of us. Thank you. A few more people, if I can request everyone. Thank you. All right. Give me 10 seconds and this will be done.
Akash, your camera.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Bharti. So since everyone's
We
not
need to
fitting into
smile
one
only for that
window,
long.
I'm going to the next window. Okay,
That's
almost
so nice.
done. Yeah.
We can start with questions. Yeah.
Yes, if anyone does have any queries, please let us know.
Go for it,
Akash, I
Malvika.
have one query.
Yeah.
Right.
What is the best solution of tagging? Sorry.
What is the
Best solution of tagging the dogs or cats after their ABC done?
You mean microchipping them, or do you mean the collar tagging?
See, if I am in a community, my community has 100 dogs and we do the ABC, then sometimes we give them color, sometimes we give them color, but that's not lasted lifelong, right? If the other NGO or other organization came in my area, took the same dog for the
No.
family, then what happened? It's not good for the animal, right? So, what is the best solution instead of cutting their ear or
So, so what? Yeah, that is why we actually suggest microchipping, because that is one way, and if it's carried out centrally, then it really allows us to avoid. In fact, we have seen that issue happen. In about 22,000 dogs, I would say that we have opened 4 females that did not need to be opened. And it was extremely infuriating because they had been operated and their ear had not been clipped. So it is that does and can be a problem. Sometimes the ear gets damaged and we're confused. We don't know whether to proceed. There are cases where there is a clipped ear and she's lactating. So those do. And in fact, in one case, it was really bad because the lactation ended up being a pseudo pregnancy because she actually had some sort of ovarian tumor. Now, these do make things worse, and that is where microchipping makes a huge difference. In IIT Delhi, we've actually succeeded in doing 100% of microchipping and sterilization and vaccination. There are perhaps only 2 or 3 dogs left. And now we just scan and we know when the dog was last vaccinated. We know when we sterilized the dog. We know if there were any in fact, we upload all the medical information and so on for the dogs as well. Someone just asked a question here about how do you legally keep information about sterilization and vaccination. We at our organization, for example, if you have got dogs sterilized by us, we give out documentation if people ask for it ever. And in fact, we are now actually, when we resume our services, we are in the process of applying for our project recognition. We just got a fantastic shining report from Animal Husbandry for recognition. Once they process that, we go for the next step. And when we resume our services, we are actually going to give out, it's an option. You can let us know if you want details. We give them. If not, the other way of legally validating a sterilization is, of course, an ultrasound. Uh, the If you are getting the dog sterilized, it makes sense to get documentation from the practitioner at that point, and perhaps with a photo. If you microchip, then that's a microchip number attached to sterilization and vaccination, which again becomes a sure shot, foolproof way to connect an ID number to relevant information about that dog.
Actually, I don't have any idea about the microchipping. So, can you guide me or send me some article or link where I can learn about it?
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. And in fact, we made a little video of our vet conducting a little, it's like a little vaccination. And it is just a chip that has an RFID scanner. So bahar se aap use पढ़ सकते हो. It is just a number. That number has to be attached to information alongside. So now that Delhi has taken it on and has said that we're going to do it for all the dogs, they will eventually develop a centralized system, which is great because imagine आपका कुत्ता दिवाली पे खो गया और कहीं और एक caregiver को एक sterilized dog मिल गया जो microchipped है. If you bring it to an ABC center, they will be able to scan and tell you where the dog is supposed to go. That is an ideal scenario. If an NGO has dropped a dog without proper sterilization or in poor care, if microchipping becomes mandatory at the point of sterilization, then you'll be able to scan and know where the dog came from. So those are steps that make a huge difference to accountability and why we are suggesting microchipping. And one more question which I get very often is कि microchipping से tumors और ये सब वो dog के लिए unsafe होता है और वो किसी तरह track कर पाएंगे, ऐसा बिल्कुल भी नहीं है. There are actually no known complications from microchipping and absolutely no relationship between tumors and microchips that have been found in studies. And microchipping is carried out even where on livestock, which have very stringent standards for care, at least abroad, not here. Both the US and the UK association, I have done my research about it before actually, embracing it. And I can vouch for the fact that there are no medical risks to the exercise.
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Anyone
Two
else?
questions. Yeah. Can
Sure.
I ask a question? Yeah. I want to find out
Absolutely.
what is the ages for vaccination for males and females, At what age should one sort of send them for sterilization, sorry,
That's
sterilization?
that okay. So that's an excellent question. Uh, 7 to 8 months. I tend to advise 7 to 8 months. Uh,
That's
the
for
reason I
females?
do so is because I
Is that
for
for females
females and
and
yes.
males?
Now see, and males. So by law in India, you can't sterilize them before they are 6 months of age. And I have a lot of people telling me, puppies can get sterile. And yes, in the US, and if it's your pet dog and you're going to keep the dog at home for post-operative care, and you absolutely trust your vet's facilities, sure. But in India, given that it's a tropical country, we are known for infections, we're known for a lot of issues. Puppies have practically no immunity. So we say at least Habibi, at least 7 to 8 months. Also, growth hormones have a role to play in growth. And one more observation, since you asked, I'd like to make. I also think it makes a difference to how males and females settle on the street. So if in a pack of dogs you go ahead and you sterilize, especially either the timid ones or the insecure ones, sometimes you see side effects of aggression actually, counterproductive to what we're told, which is कि सारे कुत्ते आराम से बैठ जाते हैं ABC के बाद. Those few exceptions sometimes are because there has actually been a territorial conflict. They're not settling down in their area, or they are being shooed out from their pack because they have been sterilized. And we saw that happen with a few females. So I therefore started sterilizing at 8 to 9 months of age, both males and females. What you have to be careful about is, like with girls, I think because of all the hormones in our food, especially chicken and I mean dubious dog food and so on. The heat period is going back, as we can see with human girls as well. So 6 7 months may, like we had my Amavas, who's now 6.5 years old. She went on heat at 6 months. And in fact, we had to then step in and sterilize her because we knew she mated and we didn't want her to have babies. So we stepped in and sterilized her within 2 weeks of mating. So that's your window. Generally, we say don't wait beyond 2 to 3 weeks. And try and avoid sterilizing when they're on heat. I mean, we do it at ABC centers because we can't start saying no to females on estrus. But this is where caregivers play a huge difference. Heat pe female hoti hai, to wait for that heat period to go down because there's more superficial bleeding during surgery. Plus, at the ABC center, there will be lots of dogs jumping on her, which can be very dangerous for her also. So avoid sending females on heat.
Yes. So, I sent a whole
Yes,
batch
we
of
do
dogs
microchipping.
actually for sterilization to friendly course. And then,
Right.
later I was told that the females, I should have sent at 10 months. And the male dogs at 1.5 years. Apparently, if you sterilize
No,
males
six
too,
months.
when they are too young, then they can get
Right.
bone cancer or something like that. That's what I was told
No,
actually.
no, there's nothing of the kind.
So are you
Yes, uh,
absolutely
absolutely
sure that
sure.
7 to 8 months for all dogs, males and females?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, because of that,
22,000
then one dog,
dogs gives you that kind of confidence.
yeah, I
Huh?
understand that. But actually, I said, so, we were saved from a lot of pregnancies. But one dog, because of this thing that was told to me, So then, I didn't send her, and then she had puppies, of course. So
Yeah,
anyway,
and
only
there
three
is no
puppies.
such thing about bone cancer or anything. There is no such
Mm.
relationship between sterilization of male dogs and bone cancer. Uh, if you can vaccinate them in time, then you vaccinate them and send them at 7 to 8 months of age. Those are actually the most successful sterilizations because the dogs are also very lean. Minimum, the older the female, the more mature the female, the fattier she will is likely to be. The more fat, the more complicated and longer the surgery, the more slippery. Um, plus anesthesia, because anesthesia gets absorbed in the fat. So you end up giving, and then there's fear of crossing that threshold and her going into anesthetic or respiratory distress. So it's the young, lean females and males are the easiest to sterilize. They recover the fastest, and if they're immunized, then you don't even worry about them being carriers of infection.
But a well-established vet, he in fact said that, 7 to 8 months is too early. For male dogs should be 1.5 years, and for females, 10 months. That's what he said actually. So I've got to actually ask him
Seven
once
to eight
again.
months is
At the
absolutely
moment,
fine. With some, I would say the cases where you would wait for a longer amount of time is where the dog is structurally, anatomically, or in some way, like suppose the dog has had distemper in the past, or suppose she had for example, I have right now Andrea, who had 11 fractures. So I'm not sterilizing her anytime soon because she needs growth, she needs recovery, she needs a lot. She's already been through a very traumatic event. So we'd wait before we put because surgery at the end of the day is trauma. So in cases where there is some other reason where you may not proceed, that's a separate issue. But otherwise, a very weak, if you've noticed, there are some dogs in a pack. Sometimes you would have noticed if there are 5 or 6 puppies, they're all the same size, but one or two of them are smaller, weaker, more timid. वो कमजोर है, वो कमजोर वाले को नहीं करना चाहिए एकदम से. And you should definitely get testing done before you make them undergo. I would actually go ahead and even get an ultrasound or an X-ray, exploratory ultrasound on an X-ray with such weak cases, because we have seen the post-op complications that I was referring to. We've seen a higher incidence of those with such immunocompromised dogs.
so what is the food that one should give after an operation? You know,
Uh, Balanced with some level of nutrients, where they get their
mm,
basic intake of protein. Protein really makes, that's why we say eggs and curd, because they need protein. Adding supplements is another way to tackle that. So you add vitamin B. So what do you think Tribivet and Bellamil and all these things are? All those pink and dark pink and light pink colored liquids are all multivitamins that are given during recovery. So orally, you would do that in the form of Neutralin B or B-Cosules. Basically, they're multivitamins.
vitamin.
But if you can do that through food, then food is a better way to get their overall balance.
Malvika
Milk
is
must
waiting.
absolutely be avoided
Yeah.
during surgery. Yeah? Milk must be avoided during surgery. Absolutely.
Mm.
Yes,
Mm.
Malvika.
It irritates
Hi, Aisha. I have so many
gastrointestinal tract.
questions.
Okay,
This
thank
was
you. Thanks.
incredible. I've been waiting for something like this for a really long time. So 3 years ago,
Okay.
I had different experiences. One, there was an NGO who operated my dog, but that person wasn't a surgeon, so I still didn't know if what the protocol was. What I understood was common sense, that if humans need a proper qualified surgeon, so do the animals. That was my basic understanding. And I'd written mails to many, including AWBI, and taken advice from advocates in my city, So all that happened. And my second experience was that my dogs were in a boarding after operation for about 8 days because they didn't have a van available. So that was a minor thing which I wasn't, I mean, it was still okay. But then I had to operate my two dogs in my mother's, office cabin. According to the surgeon, he's like, this was the best facility you have provided because, I mean, imagine the situation. He kind of saw the whole place, set it up, 2 days prior, and we had to do those surgeries there. Because I had fostered 16 puppies and I was not ready to do the whole thing again. So I understand the state of the facilities that we have. Even today, we have this government center where there's canine distemper outbreak, and now we are thinking of writing letters to kind of shut it down. My question to you is, uh, if when we speak about compliance, so I'm an animal protection law student as well. Uh, and when we speak about compliance, I have been at the receiving end of things like, you speak so much of compliance and you kind of end up shutting the project or program. I mean, not just me, but, advocates or whoever. So what is your take on that? Uh, that's one.
Right. Excellent question. Okay. Do you have another question?
I do. My second thing is I've been very vocal about the municipal corporations' lack of everything, infrastructure. I have petitions. So will I ever, even
Come
if
work
I'm
with us.
qualified, get this opportunity to kind of be impaneled, if I've been so vocal about it? Uh,
Okay. Second
that,
excellent
yeah.
question. So, it's taken me 10 long years to become this. Uh, I mean, I had to be able to say this with a smile on my face. Understand that beneath the smile is a lot of rage and exhaustion from having fought the municipality and so on. But both questions are very closely related. So, what has made it impossible for the municipality to ever kick me out or not take me seriously is my commitment to compliance and my commitment to not to saying I'll raise the bar. And it's easier said than done. And it's great to say, हमने ये किया और वो किया, but हम actually रोज करते हैं on each and every single case. And that has made it very difficult for them to be able to dismiss us. That's why the letters and the documentation and so on are very important. For example, they sent me a show cause notice about all the dogs on our premises. And I had proof that they had brought those dogs to me from the photos we take at intake, so time stamped, WhatsApp, etc. So it makes a huge difference when you are compliant because anyone trying to run you down, it's not easy. I mean, a dog has escaped from my center. I take responsibility for it, and we found that dog. There are of the four that have escaped from our center, there's only one we've not been able to ever find again. But we go back and we find that dog. And we take, as I said, we take responsibility. We're honest about it. We share that information with caregivers. So even when I've had that stern phone call from Mrs. Gandhi, I've been able to have a clear answer about what we've done or about, this is what happened and this is what happened. And it's not my job to fix this. And in fact, I remember once she called and fired me about why haven't you got the grill fixed? And I said, okay, here, there are 21 letters that I've written. And here is our bank account. What do you want me to spend money on? On antibiotics or on this? So that does not mean we make excuses. And that's the other question you had, which is that in fact, it's interesting that you said it because in all the different groups that are on right now about the whole issue in front of the Supreme Court. Now, I know recently there was a shelter that has been doing the rounds on Facebook for example, corpses lying outside. Now, incinerators are something that should be there. And yes, the fact that there are none is something that should be tackled. But what am I as an animal welfare organization if I just close my eyes and settle for this? Right in the very beginning, we had a donor who used to actually come and, scoop up poop. And right in the very beginning, kind of gave me a slide, very encouraging. She didn't put me down or say, but she said, okay, look, but there's a tendency at your center to pick up stool a little late. Ki, acha, okay, hey, I'll pick it up in one go. That cannot be the attitude. You need to pick it up every single time. And yeah, you do. So that's when you here, when you're trying to run an ABC center, I would say either you find a center that's really good. I went and mentored at, my mentor was Dr. Jack Reese. I would credit him with actually starting the ABC program, along with Dr. Chinni Krishna, one in Chennai, one in Jaipur, both doing incredible work, documenting it. And I was really lucky that he said, okay, this is, I'm sure he to this day thinks I'm a little crazy because I've since gone back to help and suffering even when I was pregnant. And incidentally, Malka, do you know why I went back? Because I decided that my staff said you don't work on the field, please. You stay inside the OT. That's the safest place to you. I will admit to you that I have gone and operated on a corpse from start to finish on a corpse. And I did it because the surgeon that I was evaluating, who was a surgeon, he was not a surgeon. He was a surgeon who was not trained properly. So he ended up clamping the colon. That's why I spoke of training surgeons even when they're young and running. And that's in fact Neighborhood Woof's future, mentoring surgeons and paravets. And that's what we want to do. There is a way to teach young. मतलब क्या आपको लगता है कि अगर एक surgeon कच्चा है, मतलब कच्चा by कच्चा, I mean, if he's just starting out, you don't expect this hand to be perfect, but there needs to be either a trained surgeon or a trained paravet who has like 20 years of experience standing right opposite him, teaching him every step, step by step. There is a way to maintain sepsis. There is a way to minimize tissue trauma. Even if you have a young surgeon, you just need to know and understand and be trained in that technique and learn how to pass it on. I trained so that if I was standing in my OT, I knew what my surgeon was doing. I have never performed. I learned, I understood the process. I learned how to identify a uterus, but I've never, ever, ever gone ahead and practiced it on a live dog. Ki chalo. And that is the ethical difference, understanding. In fact, I've recently gone and qualified myself as I'm a NAVTA approved. NAVTA is the Nurses Association for Vet Technicians in the US. I am now a NAVTA trained vet assistant. I took that training so that I understand everything that I should know. So what if I've set up a great practice? I can set up an even greater practice. So how do I improve where I am right now? I'm sure there's a way I can do even better, and I know that there are places that are better than I am. So what can I learn from there? What are better practices for documentation of treatments, for instance? So nobody's going to come and teach it to me. I have to go out and learn. If you do it yourself, when you do it, you raise the bar, you make it more difficult for others. And never, I would say, it's, I empathize with that center that left bodies outside. But I do believe that one can, I mean, yes, the answer is usually it's not our job to incinerate. It's the government's job to incinerate. And that is right. And you hold that ground. And therefore, we should all be signing a letter that says we need an incinerator, much needed incinerator for the city. And that's what we do. We're not saying, oh, these guys are rubbish and oh, these guys are nonsense and oh, nothing. That's not the way to do it. So you ask for that clear cause. But I also think it's about time that at least the younger organizations and the ones that are coming on uh, learn not to give excuses. That's how I reached where I am, because I said, I'm not going to settle for how this is done. It's not okay to put 8 dogs in a kennel. Lots of ABC centers do it. It's not okay. It's not. So we have set up an operation theater in the middle of a forest in Kanha National Park because those dogs had to be sterilized. Is that how it should be done? No. You need a mobile sterilization unit as per the special purpose vehicle, because that is where you have control of those principles of surgery I shared with you. That is what is absolutely essential, and those cannot be compromised. That's why I put them out there, that this is something you cannot compromise on. And it is up to the management to step up. I have not only redeveloped the center, but since the court has ordered that all organizations require PRC, I am holding it together and paying salaries and doing whatever is required of me, because that is the job I took on as an animal welfare organization. And 10 years down into this, I cannot be settling for this as an answer. So it's important to not only follow that compliance, but also call it out. And there is a way you can call it out without defaming a center. You can say, okay, it has come to our notice that so-and-so center is being forced to discard their bodies in so-and-so way. This is absolutely not acceptable. And right. And it is important to put that down. I know sometimes it doesn't work. I know a lot of times we feel nobody is listening. One of the ways that we are trying to approach that, and I think that's one of the reasons why, for example, FIPO exists, where we petition together, where we petition as a group, where we petition as, and I think that is the way forward as well. The more of you calling out such non-compliances, don't ever turn your eye and say, "Ha, aisa to har jagah hota hai, to it's fine." But it's important that you call out the right things. Hi, ye bachcha zameen pe baitha hua is not what we're calling it. No, they don't have, no, the kennels are not marked. No, there's no water inside the kennels. No, we saw no fans on. You put down, that's where you go back to your ABC rules and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and look at what each of these centers are supposed to have, and then talk about what they don't have, because that's the mature, sensible, central line of ask that is so desperately needed in this current environment.
Okay,
I hope I
sounds
answered
really
your
good.
question.
You did
Your question.
today. In
Someone
fact, I feel
just
less.
asked me. Right,
Sorry,
carry on.
yeah.
Someone just asked me about what is the process for AWBI recognition. It is actually, I don't know whether I should say it's simpler or more difficult. It is definitely online now. You log on, you create an ID on their website, and you provide them all the documentation that they have asked for, which you will have once you've operated for at least 3 years. Once you've done that, they usually send down an inspection team. The inspection team comes down and basically verifies what is written on that inspection report, signs off on it, and sends it back to the AWBI, who then at their next board meeting will be this proposal is placed in front of them, after which they get their recognition. Once you get your recognition, then the portal opens for you to apply for project recognition, which is more specific to ABC and will include, for example, sample formats that you should have and other exercises about ABC specific that you need. To answer your second question, Ramjot, chronologically, the first question is train yourself, understand from start to finish. I mean, read the ABC rules, train yourself first. There are lots of wonderful facilities out there run by more people like me who are interested and invested in mentoring and sharing our expertise and knowledge. We are not competing against each other. Rather, we are in that spirit of sharing. For example, one such organization that we have collaborated with is Manali Strays. And it was not, I mean, they're younger than us, but that's not how that relationship was approached. We took the funds from Delhi, but they gave us the center, the staff. We worked together. The surgeons exchanged knowledge. The paravets exchanged knowledge. We exchanged catching styles. That's the way it should be, so that both teams or multiple teams can learn from each other. Likewise, my team participated in the exercise that happened in Shimla recently, where over 90% of the dogs dogs were sterilized. Those were multiple teams working together, exchanging information. So my team, it was very sweet. I mean, one of our team members literally took a shadi ka suit to go and catch dogs because for him it was his first business trip. So it's great exposure for the team as well to go out and work with other teams. And also it helps them understand where they're good and where they're lacking both. And I think that's a great way to train as well. So find that organization, train, and understand. ABC is actually very simple. As I said, it's like a little production, like a play where everybody has a part. And if everybody just remembers to play that checklist for each and every dog that comes your way, then very little can actually go wrong. And we've been able to now understand that after years of operation. So understand that process. And the next step is then figuring out whether you want to do it with the government or whether you want to do it personally, finding that space. You have to, this is one challenge in the ABC rules and with the AWBI. You can't just get into ABC if you want to start today. You need to be at least 3 years old and have established in animal care before you can do ABC. I don't know whether that's a great thing. I'm in two minds about it. I can quite imagine us not having to go through a lot of the struggles that we had to in the beginning with the updated ABC rules. So the next step is training and engaging staff. And as I said, the way to do that is to find people. In our experience, the paravets come with too many tante. We find, train, and then qualify our staff. Get them the relevant qualifications for those who've been with us for more than a year or 2 or 3, because that actually, they don't try their own methods here in India because पढ़ाई बहुत बड़ी बात है. Paravet अपने आप को like I'm hiring someone who I've had to gently tell, आप डॉक्टर साहब नहीं हैं. And he said, and he showed me a letter from the previous organization he's working on, which is a small time NGO, that has given him a position as a doctor. So how is the organization giving him a position as a doctor? He said, sir, वो organization ने दिया होगा, हम वो organization नहीं है. But that doesn't mean I haven't given him a chance. I will still train him to follow. He doesn't get out his own thing just because he's a trained vet and he may have learned a certain style of doing something. And gone into his induction before he signed on that offer letter in the first place कि भाई तुम्हें हमारे हिसाब से दवाई देनी जो डॉक्टर साहब आपको बताएंगे, supervised by a vet. Those are basic principles one shouldn't compromise on at all.
Thank you, Aisha. Bharti, you have something to say?
I just wanted to say thank you, Aisha, for this fantastic webinar at this time when, I think some of the words that stood out for me are credibility, building credibility, both with the municipal corporation as well as in the community, the stress on processes and compliances. And I love the fact that you said no excuses. And, because I think all too often we bemoan our fate and we are crying about things. But the attitude of saying, okay, while we fight for what other people should be doing, let's go ahead and do what we need to do. I think that's really fantastic. Of course, big fan, following your work. And thank you so much for doing this with FIAPO.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you so much. Just a note to anyone, Akash and Bharti, if you could give my email address out to anyone who may want to write in about any questions. I just wanted to add, and I think I'll conclude on this note that having come this far, the way forward for me, of course, apart from fighting this in court and so on, is mentorship and training across tiers, improving the state of our facilities. And the way to do that is to share without arrogance and with the attitude that there may be some good suggestions that, in fact, the younger guys, the kind of things they think of. For example, there's an 8-year-old girl who you would have seen in the post I put up about fundraising. She's raised since 2024 Feb, when we've known her, 3.5 lakhs for our organization. There is no caregiver who has done that. 8 years old, and by making handmade soaps. And every year she's learned, she's kind of developed her idea. She was influenced by a dog called Phoenix, who was two-legged. And Phoenix, and they're both like 8-year-old small, Phoenix small. So they fell in love with each other. And it's like Phoenix knew that, she's come for him, and she developed this bond with him. So her brand, I'll have you know, is called Phoenix by Sifat. And she's gone ahead and she made some 549 soaps the first time around. And so on. So my point is that I would have never thought, I cannot imagine being so resourceful at 10. So there's a lot to learn. And when you do that sharing and working along with, I would love to, I mean, if there is someone here keen on ABC and anyone who writes in keen on ABC, I mean, मैं तो वहां जाके I'll come and I'll help you set it up, run the center, do everything and come away. And the point is not to own that or to say, yeah, neighbor, we're not interested in franchises. We're not interested in inducting more, because I know you can't see it, but because of the shining of the light, but my white hair, one center is enough. I'd like to retain whatever black hair I have. And I know that I would, in the spirit where I started out as Neighborhood Woof, be able to make a much bigger difference if I can empower more people to do the same thing. So happy to share. And if anyone wants download on any aspect of ABC, I know how much I had to struggle, and I was really lucky I found a good mentor who was willing and patient enough to answer all my questions. And I would like to follow in his footsteps and do the same for anyone else who comes my way for the same. Okay.
Wow,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Thank you so much, Aisha. Really appreciate the time
Thanks,
that you
Ash.
offered
Thanks.
us.
No, I love this is I love doing this. My father is like, oh, somebody's actually asking you to come and talk. He is fed up of listening to me. Really nice talking to all of you. And please feel free to reach out and ask any questions. Anyone who wants to actually come and be a part of the team, work with us for a little while. We are actually we follow a very open policy towards employment. The idea is to give everybody an opportunity, and that first 2 months is usually when both parties are allowed to suss out whether this is going to work out. And even if you just want to come and train and or just come and see, learn, whatever, please feel free. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening
Thank
to
you all.
me. And I hope this was
Thank you.
informative for everyone.
Extremely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone. Have a good
Thank
day.
you so much.
Thank you.